Okay, so here's the big question. How do you tell whether or not somebody is a D, an I, an S, or a C? Well, you do that by paying attention, opening your eyes and ears. Watch what they do and listen to what and how they say what they're saying. And you're going to make two simple either-or decisions. Number one, is the person I'm dealing with exhibiting based on their verbal, vocal, visual behaviors? Are they exhibiting more guarded behavior or open behavior? And number two, are they exhibiting more direct or indirect behavior? Let's start with guarded behaviors. How do you tell whether or not somebody is projecting guarded behaviors? Well, they keep their feelings private. They tend to share information only on a need-to-know basis. They make most of their decisions based on facts, logic, data, documentation, evidence. They focus their conversation on the task at hand. In other words, they stay on the subject. They tend to come across a little bit more formal and proper. They stay with the agenda. They take time to get to know because they don't share a lot of their own personal feelings. So it does take a bit more time to get to know them in business or unfamiliar social situations. They're disciplined about how their time is used by others or even wasted by others. They prefer to work by themselves, independently. They do not like physical contact. They're not touchers or huggers. They have a limited range of facial expressions during speaking and listening. And they tend to shake hands more formally, less likely to give nonverbal feedback if it's given at all. Now, how can you tell whether or not somebody is exhibiting open behaviors? Well, they show and share their feelings and thoughts readily or willingly, whether you want to know them or not. They make most of their decisions based on feelings as opposed to facts. Their conversation includes a lot of digressions. In other words, they stray from the subject. It's been said about open people that their thoughts are like gumballs. They just fall to the tongue and roll out. They're relaxed and warm. They tend to go with the flow. They're very opinion and feeling oriented and easy to get to know in business or unfamiliar social situations because they open up, they talk to you. They're flexible about how their time is used by others. They prefer to work with others, and they initiate and accept physical contact. They tend to share, or at least enjoy listening to personal feelings and stories, especially if they're positive. And while they're talking, they have a lot more animated facial expressions during speaking and listening, and they show a lot of enthusiasm, in fact, more than the average person. And their handshakes are friendly. Sometimes they grasp your hand with both hands, or as they're shaking hands with you, they put one hand on your arm or around your back. They're very likely, much more likely, to give nonverbal feedback when they're dealing with you. Now, here's the question. Based on those descriptions of guarded behaviors and open behaviors, where are you? Do you feel that you are more guarded than open or more open than guarded? Well, now it's time for a workbook exercise. What I'd like you to do is open up your workbook, the DISC e-workbook, and go to the DISC exercise, openness in people you know, and complete that activity. And when you're done, come on back. Now, the second either-or decision is to pay attention to what people say, how they say it, and their body language, and determine, are they projecting more indirect behaviors or more direct behaviors? All right, so how do you tell whether somebody is projecting more indirect behaviors? Well, they approach risk, decision, or change slowly and cautiously because their inner driving need is not to be wrong. So they check, they double check, they think about it, they sleep on it, they do their homework, their research, their due diligence because they don't want to be wrong. In group conversations, they tend to be infrequent contributors. They don't have a lot of use of gestures or vocal intonation to emphasize points. They often make qualified statements such as, well, according to my sources, or even I think so. Their questions tend to be for clarification, support, or simply for information. They reserve the expression of their opinions. They tend to come across more patient and cooperative, more diplomatic. Now, when they're not in agreement, and if it's not a big deal, they're most likely to go along rather than argue or take issue. And of course, they come across understated, more reserved. And at a social gathering, they're more likely to wait for others to introduce themselves rather than them going up and taking the initiative. They have a softer, gentler handshake, and they tend to follow established rules, regulations, and policies. Now, at the other end, we have direct behaviors. How do they come across? Well, they approach risks, decisions, or change more quickly, spontaneously, and decisively, because their inner driving need is to accomplish and achieve as much as possible, get it over with, what's next? They tend to be frequent contributors to group conversations, even when it's not their turn. They frequently use gestures and vocal intonation to emphasize points, such as, I'm talking to you. No way. There's 3 things I want to talk to you about. Those kinds of body language emphasis. They often make emphatic statements. Well, this is it. No, I'm positive. They emphasize points through confident vocal intonation and assertive body language. I want it now. Their questions tend to be rhetorical or to emphasize points or to even challenge information such as, do you really think that's true? They express their opinions readily and willingly. They're less patient, more competitive. They're more likely to maintain their position even when they're not in agreement. In other words, they tend to argue. They're intense, assertive, more likely to introduce themselves in social gatherings than to wait for somebody to come up and introduce themselves. When they're shaking hands, it's a firmer handshake, and they tend to bend or break established rules and policies. And again, as I asked you before, where do you think you are? Are you more direct or are you more indirect? And of course, now it's time for the second exercise in the workbook, in the DISC workbook. Open up the workbook, go to the DISC exercise, directness in people you know, and please complete that activity. And when you're done, come on back. I'll be here. By now, you know how to recognize the 4 behavioral types by observing their verbal, vocal, and visual behaviors. The 4 combinations that we've just discussed, the direct and guarded, or the D style, the direct and open, or the I style, the indirect and open, or the S style, and finally, the indirect and guarded, or the C style, all behave differently from each other in various situations. Whether at home, at work, or even socially, they all naturally act true to their own style. It's their attempts to fill their type's needs and expectations. By acting themselves, they show their true core behavioral colors. In fact, by the end of this program, you will have the skills to get a quick reading on almost anyone. You do that by learning to read the clues. Again, they come in 3 forms: verbal, vocal, and visual behaviors. The simplest way to start sorting out the behavioral types is to just listen to their verbal clues, how much they talk, and what kinds of words and phrases that they use. 2 of our behavioral types, the D and the I, exhibit outgoing, fast-paced behaviors. Of course, they're outgoing in different ways. One's a commanding personality, and the other is more of a natural showman, an entertainer. But neither is shy. They both tend to talk a lot, and they do so energetically. So for starters, if you meet someone for the very first time and they come on strong, they're likely either a D or an I. That's your first clue. Conversely, if they're quiet and soft-spoken, they're probably an S or a C. Those 2 types are not so quick to assert themselves. So right away, when you can peg someone as assertive and talkative or low-key and reserved, you can cut by half the possibilities of which style that they are. So already you're 50% of the way there. The second verbal sign is what people say, their actual words, their pace, and especially their priority. These are assertive, results-oriented people for whom getting the job done and accomplishing tasks is quite important. They're not shrinking violets, so you can expect them to speak quickly and strongly. They tend to listen less and talk more, usually making emphatic statements rather than asking questions. They're strong and talkative, but in a way that moves the discussion firmly ahead toward his or her most prized goals, which would be results, victory, solutions, and even tangible progress. Now, the I's are also outgoing verbal people, but they're more sociable, playful, and fun. They are more oriented toward people than tasks. The I style is talkative, in fact, usually downright chatty, but their words will have a different ring than the words of the D. They'll be much less direct and seldom authoritarian. And I's talk will be more about people and ideas. They'll use words like feelings, impressions, team, concept, ideas. I's see life as more of a celebration. They don't want to triumph as much as they want to be liked and to have everyone enjoy themselves. Okay, let's say that this person you meet is not talkative or chatty. They don't start off acting as if they've known you for years or as if they've been put in charge. In fact, when you meet them, they're quietly pleasant and low-key. So clearly, what you have here is either an S style or a C style. They both tend to be a bit quiet and seldom aggressive or loud. They listen more than they talk. When they do speak, it's often with questions rather than direct statements about their own thoughts or feelings. They're the kind of people who probably wouldn't plunge into a crowded room, but instead would take a few minutes to scope out the goings-on from the sidelines. Now, observing that, you can eliminate the D or the I styles. But how do you distinguish between that person being an S or a C? Well, again, listen to what they say. S's are friendly, sensitive people who like to ask the opinion of others and wouldn't think of forcing their views on someone else. They like stability and they like being accepted. Now, C's are also reserved and slower paced, but they're very independent people. They're much more likely to get into things and get things done than the S's, but in a much more understated way than the D's might get things done. So in other words, to summarize, if the person you meet is reserved and low-key, you can first assume that they're likely to be an S style or a C style. Then you listen to them. If they're warm and friendly and talk a lot about people, feelings, and togetherness, you've probably found an S style. They see life as a team effort in which the goal is to work together amiably without making too many waves. Now, a C style, on the other hand, is also reserved, but focuses more on the tasks than the relationships. They want to solve problems, get things done, make progress, but all in a non-obtrusive, orderly, low-key way. The C styles see life as mainly a management problem. First, figure out the tasks, then accomplish them by patiently and carefully applying facts and logic. The bottom line here is this. You can go a long way toward figuring out someone's personal style by simply paying attention to their verbal clues. But we don't just speak words. Our voices are sophisticated instruments, and we use them to send many signals about how we're feeling and how we're thinking. Now, each of the four behavioral styles has a range of vocal characteristics. D's and I's are confident, outgoing people, so they'll speak quickly with confident-sounding intonations. D's especially communicate forcefully and with an intonation that often seems to carry an implicit challenge. I's, they're good storytellers, and they have the most variety in vocal quality of any of the other four styles. So they use a lot of inflection. And as they share their personal feelings, they greatly vary the pitch of their speech. S's and C's, on the other hand, usually speak more slowly and often come across as more contemplative. S's normally use a steady, even-tempered delivery. They often project warmth and sincerity into their voices. They silently announce, "I'm a friendly person, but I'm neither pushy nor do I like to be pushed." The C's probably use the least inflection of any of the four styles, often speaking in a monotone, calm, measured voice, and with few variations in pitch. Their voice doesn't tell you much about what they're thinking. There's one other obvious external indicator of style, the visual, or what's known as body language. This can take many forms. For instance, facial expressions or lack thereof, hand and body movements such as touching, pointing, even gesturing, eye contact, whether it's steady or intermittent, and even spontaneous dramatic actions like leaping up from a chair or giving somebody a hearty slap on the back. Not surprisingly, D's and I's again come across as emphatic, assertive people who make strong first impressions, good or bad. Physically, they take the initiative. From D's, you'd expect a firm handshake, steady eye contact, and frequent gestures, often a jabbing, stabbing motion when they speak to back up their strong statements. Their body language, like everything else about them, is fast-moving and frequently suggests impatience and power. Similarly, the I employs a lot of hand and body movement while speaking and is probably the most facially animated of all the four. Big smiles, furrowed brows, cants of the head, and quizzical looks, come to them as naturally as breathing. Now, I'm Italian. That's a whole other issue. The I almost is inclined toward spontaneous touching, a reassuring hand on the shoulder, a fond pat on the back, or a big two-handed handshake. Eye contact by S's is intermittent. Sometimes they'll even look at the floor or to the side rather than looking at you directly. Handshakes are more tentative and gentle, and their slower moving body language suggests calmness and patience. Poker-faced is a phrase probably first coined about a C style because they make few facial expressions or gestures. They'd be good poker players. Further, because they have a strong sense of space, they're not inclined toward touching. They're not touchers or feelers. Okay, 4 behavioral styles. Each one has its own characteristics, and one way to sort them out is to identify particular verbal, vocal, and visual clues unique to that style. Now let's move on to an identifying style exercise. In this exercise, I want you to listen to each of these 4 audio clips. Each clip has a professional stage actor playing the role of Michelangelo, who has just been given the job to paint the Sistine Chapel by the Pope. Now pay attention to each audio clip. I want you to listen to the speaker's words, the inflection, the speed of delivery, everything. And then I want you to decide which style the actor is playing, whether it's the D style, the I style, the S style, or the C style. You're going to have a lot of fun with this exercise, and I think it really will help you listen to somebody to both the words and the way the words are spoken, the inflection. Good luck.
Enrico, I need 17 draftsmen, only the best. Send out messengers to Naples, Verona, Milan, and Venice, even Sicily if that's what it takes. Here's my preliminary sketch. Set up a meeting so they can divide up the chapel ceiling, and if anyone creates problems, get rid of them. I want to make some opening comments at the meeting, get clear with them on how I expect this to come out. Giuseppe, check into scaffolding. We're going to need a lot. Let's say next Tuesday, get back with me with several estimates on that. Luigi, find out from the Vatican's architect or mason or whoever if there's anything we need to know about the building. and then get as many different colors of paint as there are on both sides of the Mediterranean, 500 gallons of each. Marino, set up a meeting with Enrico, Giuseppe, and Luigi to talk budget. Here are the numbers from the Cardinals, and they say that His Holiness doesn't want us going over. That won't be a problem, I know, but I expect us to come under by about 5 silver ducats on the gold piece. And Enrico, get me 3 or 4 assistants. I need to get down there and have a look at the place tomorrow before I head up to Florence to look at a cathedral up there. I'll also want to start looking at models for the angels early next week. And you know what I like. Enrico, I have some very good news. I know things haven't been going so well with you and Sophia. I pay you what I can, but unfortunately my business goes up and down. Oh, you understand, don't you? But things are looking up. One of the cardinals from the Vatican just left. A very nice man. They all seem to be so nice, warm, sincere, that's the word. Anyway, His Holiness has chosen me for that new chapel ceiling. Us, I mean. Our team. Isn't that wonderful? It's going to be an amazing project. Artists for once working side by side with a shared vision instead of everyone in his own studio. We'll have to find a few talented artists that can truly understand what the Vatican has in mind. The Cardinal and I had a long talk about what the work should look like. It's truly magnificent. We've been asked to create a work of art reflecting both the majesty of God and the greatness of the Church. It'll be hard, but I have no doubt that we'll come through. The best part is how truly inspirational it's going to be. Just talking to the Cardinal, sharing ideas and concepts and images was indescribable. I have another meeting set up for Friday when I'll present some preliminary sketches to a panel of several Cardinals. Enrico, I want these sketches to be perfect. I want you to work on them with me. I know they came to me, but I'd feel better with your input. Would you mind staying late? I hate to ask, but it means so much. Of course, I'll pay you for it once they get me in advance, or before if you need it. You know that all you have to do is ask. So let me get out some materials. No, sit. And we'll get started.
Enrico, come in. Have a glass of wine. Hey, it's good stuff from the same vineyard where the Vatican gets most of theirs. Don't ever accuse me of not having connections. It turns out the vineyard owner is my neighbor's cousin's wife's uncle, and he happened to be visiting, and we got to talking. One thing led to another, and he took some of my sketches over to the Vatican. They were nothing. A couple of things I had lying around the studio, pieces I used to wipe up spilled paint. Luigi, hey, come in, get a glass. I'm telling Rico about the new commission. They want me to paint the ceiling of this new chapel. It's gonna be fun. Oh, we're gonna need a lot of people up there. This is a chance to pay back all the favors everyone's done for me over the years. So remind me, I have to send a messenger over to see if Paolo and Bobo are working on anything right now. And old Benito. Oh, yeah, maybe he'll bring along his lute and a few of those dancers he had at his villa after the last Senate elections. The cardinal or bishop or whoever it was, they say they want something religious, sort of heavenly and reverent, but also pretty. So I figure if we get enough decent artists together, we're bound to come up with something. Angels, harps, clouds, the usual. Now, are you guys busy next Saturday? Oh, wait. That's the big chariot race. No, make it the following Saturday. No, my weekend at Capri, no. Okay, Saturday after that. Okay, everyone come over to my place. We'll throw down some canvas, get out some brushes, eat, drink, make a few sketches. Hey, maybe His Holiness would stop in to have a look. Although, if what I've heard is true about what's going on behind those big white walls, he might be too busy. This is some story. Marino, come in here. You'll want to hear this too. But you gentlemen did not hear it here. Enrico, I need to talk to you for a minute, please. I've just received a large commission from the Vatican. Oh, please, don't say anything. I don't need any congratulations. I need to get started right away. Now, I expect to be deeply involved in this for quite a while, so I won't be taking any other orders. If anyone comes by with a project, take their name and address and tell them they will hear from me within 3 months. Well, that's all. Thank you. The Sistine Chapel, originally built in 1473. Large vaulted ceiling. Well, His Holiness specifically wants certain Old Testament scenes. I will need 1, the overall measurements, 2, the angles of inclination, 3, the overall surface area, 4, the number of scenes to be depicted. I will have to find out when the chapel is in use to schedule my work around it, in the quiet, empty times. I might begin on one side with the creation and work my way clockwise toward the center with the flood, the Exodus, and so on. Or I might divide the surface area into a discrete number of panels and assign a theme to each. The question is, do I want to follow in the stylistic traditions of the classical fresco masters or branch off into a new direction? This is an opportunity to establish new possibilities and standards in the art. It's a form that has hardly been explored. Diagrams. I will come up with some diagrams and then consult with those cardinals at the Vatican who have expertise in this field. Each segment of the work must stand alone, as well as integrating into the whole. Well, I'd better start rereading. Enrico, could you please bring me my Bible?
Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed that exercise. Now let's put it all together. Based on whether or not you are either open or guarded, and based on whether or not you are more direct or indirect, it leads to one of 4 basic patterns of behavior. As you look at this slide, are you more direct and guarded? If so, you're the D style, the more dominant style. Are you more open but direct? You are the I style, the more influential, interactive, socializing style. If you are guarded and indirect, you are the C style, and that style is the more compliant, cautious, conscientious style. And finally, if you decided that you were more indirect but open, you are the S style, the more steady, amiable, relating style.